Citizens just like me are being targeted by an administration willing to take any action necessary to silence opposition.
This is Catherine Engelbrecht, testifying before Congress in February.
I come before you today, Mr. Chairman, on behalf of Americans just like me, asking for a solution to end this ugly chapter of political intimidation.
It's a House hearing on the IRS targeting of conservative groups, like those headed by Ms. Engelbrecht. Earlier in January, I sat down with her in Houston, Texas, to hear her story.
I was married and raising kids and live out in the country. My goal was just to be left alone to live the life that I think every American's entitled to.
We made 6 of these.
About 20 years ago, she and her husband Brian started up Engelbrecht Manufacturing, which makes oil drilling equipment.
My name's Catherine Engelbrecht, for those of you that might be with us for the first time tonight.
However, in 2009, unhappy about what was going on in Washington, she got involved in politics, founding the King Street Patriots.
Is it a Tea Party group?
We absolutely identify with Tea Party ideals.
That same year, Engelbrecht started True the Vote, an electoral watchdog group.
We look to see if there are people who are registered more than once or dead people registered in voting. And then we advocate for common sense reforms.
In the summer of 2010, she applied for tax-exempt status for both groups, which could help her organizations grow by letting donors write off their contributions.
To the new speaker.
In the 2010 elections, Republicans swept to historic gains, taking the House and picking up 6 seats in the Senate. Meanwhile, Engelbrecht was still waiting to hear about her group's status.
Had you heard anything about your application 6 or 7 months later?
No, we hadn't heard anything, and I didn't have any point of reference like what was normal.
I've done this for dozens and dozens and dozens of organizations going back for many years.
Cleta Mitchell, a Washington, D.C. tax attorney, represents Catherine Engelbrecht.
That processing would take 3 to 4 weeks, maybe 2 months.
Then in February 2012, about a year and a half after Engelbrecht first applied for tax-exempt status, the IRS requested more information.
They wanted to see my Twitter feed. They wanted to see every Facebook posting I'd ever posted. They wanted to know if I had political aspirations. They wanted my resume. They wanted to know, this is the one that always gets me, they wanted to know everywhere I'd ever spoken since the inception of the organization and to whom and what I said.
When director of the IRS Exempt Organization Division, Lois Lerner, was later asked by the House Oversight Committee about all the questions Tea Party groups were required to answer, she claimed it was, quote, in the ordinary course of the application process.
Those are lies, and we can prove it's not true by looking at the data and looking at the process before 2010.
In October of 2012, the IRS sent Engelbrecht yet another round of questions. The following month, Barack Obama swept to a second term.
The net effect of the IRS's targeting of our organization was absolutely the limiting of how far we could reach and how many people we could engage.
So why do you think the IRS behaved in the way it did?
Because it could.
On May 10, 2013, in anticipation of an Inspector General report critical of the IRS, Lois Lerner admitted that her agency had indeed inappropriately targeted Tea Party groups for additional scrutiny.
I was glad to hear that she spoke the truth. I mean, of course they have. What else is this?
The defense generally from the IRS has been, we're not malevolent, we're just incompetent.
Oh, I sleep a lot better thinking that.
In January 2014, the Department of Justice made it known that though its investigation has not been completed, there were no plans to file criminal charges over the IRS scrutiny of conservative groups.
It was open season on political targets. This administration has taken the IRS and used it to its own effect as a weapon. And that should send a chill through every American citizen, whether or not you're conservative.
But as Engelbrecht found out, Catherine Engelbrecht applied for tax-exempt status for her political groups in mid-2010. She endured more than 3 years of inaction from the IRS. By late 2013, after becoming a poster child for alleged IRS abuse, her groups were finally granted tax-exempt status. But during that long wait, the IRS kept her occupied in other ways.
Aside from the tax-exempt business,
right?
you had more run-ins with the IRS. Tell us about that.
The IRS showed up to audit our business, and we'd never been audited before, so here again you think, well, maybe I just drew the short straw, and we went through the audits. Those audits of our businesses led to personal audits.
In fact, it suddenly seemed the government was interested in every aspect of Engelbrecht's life. In December of 2010, FBI agents made a surprise visit to the meeting place of her Tea Party group, the King Street Patriots in Houston, to ask Engelbrecht a series of questions.
It was the domestic terrorism unit, and they wanted information on somebody that attended one of our meetings.
You think the FBI thought you were involved with terrorists?
I don't know what they thought.
Did they ever offer you an explanation as to why they were asking all these questions?
No.
And they either showed up or called you to check up half a dozen times.
Right.
That doesn't happen to most people.
So they tell me.
Then in February 2012, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms showed up unannounced at the Engelbrecht's manufacturing business in Rosenberg, Texas. As it happens, the Engelbrechts are licensed to manufacture firearms. They say they never have.
We don't make them.
Had you ever had this kind of inspection before from the ATF?
No. No.
What were they looking for?
They were looking for a way to scare us.
In July of 2012, yet another federal agency, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, showed up unannounced at the Engelbrechts' business to conduct a surprise inspection. After spending 2 full days scouring the business for workplace violations, OSHA found several infractions. For example, a forklift operator wasn't using a seatbelt. OSHA imposed some hefty fines.
I think our tally for that little tour was about $22,000, something like that.
$22,000?
Maybe a little more than that.
So 4 federal agencies are now looking at the Engelbrechts: the IRS, the ATF, the FBI, and OSHA.
Isn't it possible that this was all just a coincidence?
Wouldn't that be great? But you start stacking it all up, and at some point, you know, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck.
We called up these agencies and asked for a response. The IRS said they were legally prevented from disclosing any information. The FBI did not reply. The ATF said they were within their rights to make a warrantless inspection, and OSHA said theirs was just a routine random inspection.
Did you ever ask any of these agents or agencies why the sudden interest in you and your lives?
No, they were just following orders.
Where did the orders come from?
There's the question.
In addition to all this attention from government agencies, Engelbrecht was soon piquing the interest of some high-placed names in Washington. Some Democrats complained that electoral watchdog groups such as True the Vote were really engaged in voter suppression, particularly of minorities.
What True to Vote does is zero in on students, African Americans, people who would normally vote Democratic.
Just days before the election, Robert Bauer, serving as general counsel of Obama for America, a man who had been demanding investigations into Republican groups for years, issued a memorandum claiming that True the Vote was part of a Republican disenfranchisement program engaged in possibly illegal intimidation tactics.
What did you think when you saw that memo?
Yeah, I thought, boy, that puts it in the West Wing, doesn't it?
Here you have the former White House counsel to President Obama and the former general counsel to his re-election campaign and the Democratic National Committee accusing you of some pretty horrendous things. How did that feel?
I know who we are. I know what we do. I know what we're about. They're lies.
You have been quoted as saying that they picked the wrong chick. What do you mean by that?
That if this is an attempt to silence me, they've got another thing coming. I know exactly what I'm here to do, and I mean to do it. And I'm not the only one. I'm speaking for thousands, maybe tens of thousands, maybe more citizens who've had these types of experiences. We will not be silenced.